If there's one thing that I think most people can relate to, it's deciding on a habit that you want to implement into your life, only to find that a couple months later, or even a few days later, for some reason, the habit didn't quite stick. Maybe you blamed your schedule. You've been really busy lately and you just didn't have time to get down to it. Maybe you blamed your willpower, your emotions. You just didn't have that rush of motivation come over you lately in order to stick to that habit. Or maybe you looked yourself in the mirror, looked yourself right in the eye and kept it 100 with yourself and you said, you know what? I messed up. I didn't keep it a priority. I didn't commit to what I wanted to commit to. I let myself down, let's try again. What I realized over the years of trying to build new habits and be more productive and live a life that's more in the direction that I intentionally want it to be, is that it's never a problem of developing habits. Because every day, we all have habits that we act on consistently. The problem is that sometimes those habits are bad habits that were not intentional. And what we really want to try is to create positive habits that we had influence behind. If you want to get back on track in your life and take those habits that have forever been sitting in your head as just a plan and instead turn it into part of your lifestyle, there's a few things I've learned over the years from the books I've read and the experiences I've had, and I want to share that with you in this video. Now, every habit, whether good or bad, is made up of a 4-part system that plays over and over again subconsciously, whether you realize it or not. And as it plays out, it either leads you down a path towards your destiny or a path towards your destruction. And as over dramatic as that sounds, everything we do, it compounds on each other. So if you have a bad habit, and every day you're doing that bad habit, it compounds. Every positive habit compounds. And then 5 years later, it really leads you to a completely different life depending on which way you go. So sure, it sounds dramatic, but destruction, destiny, it's probably more accurate than not. The 4 parts of every habit system is made up of a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. In that order as a feedback loop. And the quicker we can acknowledge and recognize this loop in our everyday life, the better we can get at taking and recognizing the bad habits that we have and breaking it down and finding out what we want to create as a new habit and building it up in a way that's efficient and works every single time. Every habit has a cue. The cue acts as somewhat of a trigger that leads us into this craving. And of course, cravings are emotional, so it leads us to us taking an action in the form of response. And that response inevitably leads to some form of a reward, which satisfies that initial craving. And we associate that to whatever the cue is that led us down that feedback loop in the first place. And before you know it, that feedback loop happens every single day, and we've got ourselves a habit, good or bad. So I want to give you an example of how this plays out for me every single morning. A bad version of a habit is when I wake up in the morning, that's the cue, just waking up. And my initial craving would be to go and check my computer, to check on Reddit, check on my crypto portfolio, my stocks, check Instagram and social media. So that craving leads to the response of me going over there and doing it. And when I inevitably do it, there's a huge reward. There's a dopamine rush that comes from doing all those activities. And then it leaves me sitting at my computer, which I end up staying there for hours. My back feels sore, I'm not energetic, I'm not really woken up. It just leaves me down a bad path for the day. On the flip side, an example of a good morning habit is I wake up, which is a cue, and it leads to a craving of wanting to feel energized, wanting to feel loose and start my day the proper way. That leads to a response of me going over to my yoga mat. I sit down, I go through 7 or 8 different poses, different stretches. It creates a strong foundation for the day. As soon as I get that momentum going, it often leads into a light workout. I get up, I start doing things productive, and it makes a completely different difference in my day from the bad habit. So you can kind of see how it goes both ways, and I'm sure you can imagine how that works in your everyday life. I'm sure you have a morning routine, and you know when it goes bad and you know when it goes good. Knowing this 4-part phase of every habit is so important. I've literally had it written on my whiteboard for 6 months. Because every day I can look at it and I can recognize, okay, what part of my day am I not happy about? And what's the cue? What's the craving? What response does it lead to? What's the reward that I get from it that reinforces this bad habit? And on the other side, I can break it down and fix it in order to create a positive habit. And the more you act on it, the more you implement it into your life, you'll find that you're gonna be more and more consistent, and it leads you down that path that you've always wanted. And it makes it a lot easier to stick to it because you understand it. There's a quote that I think is really relevant to this whole discussion here, and it's, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Because the goals, as great as they are, it doesn't matter if you don't have a way to implement it consistently. And that's where the systems come in. If you want to make a good habit a big part of your life, then you also have to make the cue for that habit a big part of your everyday environment. If you've ever been around people that have a really great set of daily habits, what you might know is that they don't rely on willpower. They don't rely on being tempted every day and having to work through it. What they rely on is controlling their environment, because it's so much easier to avoid temptation than it is to muster up the willpower to resist it. So for any good habit, the more you can make the cue obvious, attractive, satisfying, and easy, the odds of implementing that habit into your life is going to go skyrocket significantly. And on the very counter of that, instead of making easy, if you make bad habits hard, if instead of making it obvious, you make it not obvious. Instead of making it satisfying, you make it not satisfying, attractive, not attractive. And you can counter the natural effects of having a bad habit that you're so used to. For me, I mostly use the law of obvious and easy to set up my environment in a way that I can get into good habits quick. For example, usually every morning, if it's not already there the night before, I bring out my yoga mat into this room and I put it right beside my computer desk. That way when I'm working, if I have free time, when I'm on my break, when I'm on my lunch, I can just go down on the mat and do some stretches. When I'm hungry, when I want a snack, in advance, I purposely hide things like the bread. I hide the candy. I hide the chocolate. I hide the things that taste good, but that I know I shouldn't be eating on a daily basis. And then instead, on the table, I have the bananas and the fruit out on the table in plain sight. So you need to look in your life and think, okay, what is a habit that I want to implement more? And what is a cue that I can base my environment around in order to constantly remind me of that thing, to make it obvious, to make it easy? How can I make it satisfying? How can I make it attractive to do that thing? How can I reward myself for that thing? And then that feedback loop we talked about earlier kicks into effect. And as you implement that daily, it turns into a habit that doesn't require you to have a willpower. It doesn't require you to constantly think about it. It becomes a natural progression in every part of your day. I'm sure you've heard that cliche saying that people should accept me for who I am. But in reality, I don't think you should even accept yourself for who you are. Yes, if you have flaws and things about yourself that are permanent and can't be changed, you should accept it. But for the many things about ourselves that are open to change, that are variable, we should be striving to improve, because your identity is a result of your habits. The actions you take every day in and out is what makes up who you are. See, the truth is, everything you get, every result you have in your life right now, it's not a result of anything you've done earlier today or even yesterday. It's probably a result of things that you did months ago or years ago, because our results are always lagging. So if for example, if you find yourself to be underweight or overweight today, it really has nothing to do with what you did a week ago. It has to do with what you've been doing the past months, the past years. When it comes to taking action and building habits, it's so much better to take low quality but consistent action than it is to take really high quality but infrequent action. Because you're gonna get high quality results from that consistent low quality action that you'll never get from doing really good stuff once a month. You've probably heard the phrase, practice makes perfect. I'm a big fan of the phrase, practice makes improvement. One of the things I try to do is, for every habit, I try to think of a 2-minute action I can take to get started. And if I take that 2-minute action, then I could quit for the day if I want to. For example, if I want to work out, the 2-minute activity I can do is put on my clothes I want to work out in and do just one set. It takes less than 2 minutes. And if I do that, I give myself permission to quit if I decide I want to do that at that time. But the thing is, once you've done the 2-minute activity, whatever it is, by that time you've already got the momentum, and odds are you will not stop and you'll continue doing a lot more. It's very rare to do something, to start it, and then to stop right away, because the hard part is starting. A lot of the concepts and ideas in this video are not my original thoughts or genius ideas. It's from a book I read that I've learned, and this book is now my top 5 favorite books of all time. It's called Atomic Habits, and I highly recommend it. The reason it shot up into my top 5 is because everything is so simple, it's so practical, it's so laid out, and I can see how it directly relates to me improving all the good habits I want to implement in my life and to get rid of all the bad habits that I'm still struggling with. So I highly recommend it, Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos around self-discovery, definitely check out this playlist right here. I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.